cannot assess at this point that anyone else involved in this attack is involved in this attack except for Shamsuddin Jabbar.
Our subject is 37-year-old Matthew Livelsberger. He's of Colorado Springs, Colorado, born July 22nd of 1987.
There's no time to waste. We have to stay unified. The American people gave us a mandate.
Hello, I'm Robert Costa in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. The FBI now says they believe the man behind the deadly New Year Day attack in New Orleans worked alone. From his military background to online videos he posted hours before the attack, we're learning more about the alleged assailant. This afternoon, President Joe Biden addressed the latest on the investigation.
The attacker posted several videos just several hours before the attack, indicating his strong support for ISIS. Federal law enforcement and the intelligence community are actively investigating any foreign or domestic contacts and connections that could possibly be relevant to the attack.
Meanwhile, a truck explosion outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas is being investigated as a possible act of terrorism. What we're learning about the man behind the New Year's Day blast. We start tonight with CBS News reporter Katie Weiss in New Orleans. Katie, thanks for being here. What more are you learning this evening on the ground in New Orleans?
Well, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you might be watching in the country tonight. I know a lot of people are very concerned about what's been going on here in the French Quarter. I'm standing about a block away from where the attack took place yesterday, just after 3 a.m. I was in this area when it happened and was able to speak with witnesses at the time, but now we're learning a lot more. We were able to learn, first of all, I was able to confirm first today among any news outlet that both police officers who were shot in this attack have been released from the hospital. They are home safe. And I am told also from my police sources that they are, quote, doing well, which is very exciting news, certainly amid a lot of heavy news for folks here in the Big Easy. Some other things that we're learning, as you can see behind me here at this intersection of Iberville and Royal Street, like I said, just a block away from Bourbon where the attack took place, you can see that there are several armed guards. You'll see a lot of these armed guards throughout the French Quarter tonight and probably for the next few weeks as well. I'm told that the state has released several resources through an executive order, including the National Guard. We've seen Homeland Security here. They have made this French Quarter basically on lockdown when it comes to security. Every single area, every single intersection you walk to, you'll see barricades like this. Extra protections to make sure that another attack doesn't come when we have so many other big sporting events upcoming.
Stay with us. Authorities, we now learn, have searched a Houston location linked to the attacker and his Airbnb in New Orleans. What more are you and CBS News colleagues learning about him?
Well, we know that the officials have actually obtained 3 different cell phones and 2 laptops from the attacker that belonged to the attacker, and they have been reviewing those, combing through those for more information about what his motives might have been. Also, something we learned from the FBI earlier today is that the attacker had actually posted 2 different videos on his social media accounts while he was on his way here to Louisiana to carry out the attack. So, and in those videos, one of those videos, he actually talked about how he had joined ISIS earlier this year, just before the summer, according to the FBI, and how he wanted the focus of his attack to be more on the fight between believers and non-believers. That is a quote, the war between believers and non-believers. So some very interesting evidence here about his motivations potentially for carrying out this attack. But we're going to continue to learn more and ask authorities for more information to better understand and get a full picture of what could have gone wrong here.
Katie Weiss on the ground on this tragic story. Thank you for your reporting. We'll stay with you in the coming days. Let's now bring in Colin P. Clark. He's the director of research for the Soufan Group, a global intelligence and security consultancy. Thanks for being here. The New Orleans attack, as you know, is being investigated as an act of terrorism, while the Las Vegas Cybertruck explosion that took place in a Cybertruck is being investigated as a possible act of terrorism. What do you know about the difference, if any, between these attacks in terms of the nature of a terrorist attack and the investigations?
The Las Vegas attack may very well be a suicide that was meant as some form of political protest. Other than the individual in the car that was killed, no one else was killed, to my knowledge. Whereas the New Orleans attack was clearly intended to kill the maximum amount of people, to maximize casualties, done with multiple layers of redundancy: the vehicle, firearm, and then improvised explosive devices which failed to detonate.
What do you make of how law enforcement officials are determining what happened in New Orleans regarding terrorism, but taking a little bit more time, it seems, in Las Vegas?
Well, I think, the fact that there were videos posted by the New Orleans attacker, the fact that there was an Islamic State flag found attached to the vehicle, there's just more evidence, there's more data points suggesting what the motive was. Whereas in Las Vegas, I haven't seen any kind of a manifesto, any kind of, video, any kind of recordings that have explained why this individual did what he did. Was it an anti-Trump, anti-Elon Musk act? Was it meant to serve some different purpose? And again, this is somebody that was in the special forces. Had he wanted to kill large numbers of people, I have no doubt that he could have. He chose not to.
A link between these incidents has not yet been identified. Charlie talked about some of the overlap in terms of just the kind of profile of the alleged assailants or people involved in these respective cases. When you look at both of these and you see the military backgrounds, what does that say, if anything, to you?
Well, I think we have to be fair and say that these were quite different military careers. The special forces officer involved in the Las Vegas attack was a five-time Bronze Star recipient, whereas the individual in New Orleans attack was in human resources and information technology. Not to denigrate his service at all. I think very different types of careers, very different types of capabilities that each of these individuals possessed.
What next? What are officials looking for in terms of any potential connections, any new clues? What do you expect to be potentially revealed in the coming days in terms of the scope of the investigations?
Yeah, so the authorities are doing the digital forensics right now, going through the electronic devices, likely of both individuals, obviously looking to see if they've communicated with each other in any way. I think for Jabbar, the New Orleans attacker, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on, was this an individual that was merely inspired by the Islamic State, or was he actually in touch with any Islamic State operatives overseas, meaning a different type of attack? We would call that, rather than ISIS-inspired, we say he was cyber-coached, or what we used to refer to as virtual entrepreneurs, where ISIS is identifying an individual and then kind of helping them select a target, helping them select a weapon, tactics, etc.
Tough story. Colin P. Clark, thank you for your insights and for stopping by. As the investigation into the New Orleans attack gets underway, one Louisiana congressman is vowing that, quote, no stone will be left unturned. Next, we're joined by that Congressman Troy Carter. You're watching America Decides.
I want to reassure the public that the city of New Orleans is not only ready for game day today, but we're ready to continue to host large-scale events in our city because we are built to host at every single turn.
As you can see, the city of New Orleans clearly grappling with a devastating terrorist attack that killed at least 14 people. The city's mayor insisting it is prepared to hold many major events coming up this winter and spring. Let's bring in Democratic Congressman Troy Carter. He represents Louisiana's 2nd District, which covers part of New Orleans. Congressman, regrets and condolences to your community as you deal with this tragedy and the fallout. A lot of grief going on tonight in your community. What is your message to them as a lawmaker, as someone who's connected to the community, as a leader at this time?
First of all, thank you all. And my message would be to send a resounding message to the rest of the world and to the president and to our federal, local, and state law enforcement agents a huge thank you for apportioning the resources to assure the American people that the full faith and credit of the United States is behind protecting its citizens and pushing back against terrorism. I'd like to also offer our prayers and condolences and thoughts to those individuals who lost loved ones and those who are still in the hospital recovering, and to our 2 law enforcement agents who were injured in the line of duty, a huge thank you for their heroism. And to send a message to the rest of the world that New Orleans is in fact open for business. No police department has more experience in managing large-scale events than the New Orleans Police Department. Super Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Mardi Gras, Jazz Festival, Essence Festival, PGA tournaments. We do it better than anyone. Acts of terrorism, unfortunately, can happen anywhere. Not unique to New Orleans. We've seen it in Las Vegas. We've seen it in Boston. We see it more frequently. The message to terrorists is that we will not concede to you. We will not cower to you. We will find you under any stone that you may hide, and we'll bring you to justice.
Congressman, the Sugar Bowl between the University of Notre Dame and Georgia, University of Georgia, is being played on Thursday today at the Superdome. Was there any debate among you and other members of the Louisiana delegation about going forward with that game?
The only debate was to make sure that we had redoubled our efforts and were confident that we would be able to protect the citizens. And as I said to many media outlets, if we go forward, it will be because we have determined that we have secured the space and we're confident that we can protect individuals, because nothing's more important than public safety. So the message that we sent by postponing it 24 hours to just reassure and to double down in an abundance of caution to make sure that we've taken every necessary step to secure the citizens. Football games are nice, and this is certainly an important one, but public safety trumps everything. And kudos to the FBI and all those on the ground who did an incredible job of securing the community, taking down the villain, if you will, and securing our area to send a message that New Orleans is open for business, not only today, but going forward. We're safer now than we were before. We've learned from the breach that took place where the subject was able to get around a police car. We know that acts of terrorism are just that. They're shock and awe. They seek to find any weak area. This gives us an opportunity to shore up our areas, to be stronger and more diligent and vigilant in protecting our citizens and not backing down, nor letting the culture or the richness of our community suffer, nor its citizens or its visitors.
What about the future, Congressman, of Bourbon Street? Does something need to happen there?
Yeah, I think clearly in our briefings and in meetings with the governor and with our mayor, there has been a supercharged reevaluation of all of the points of entry into the quarter to make sure that we have fortified that weakness that was determined, where a car was able to go around the blockade on the street. We now will have blockades that will fortify the sidewalk as well, and those external arteries that they may be able to gain access to ensure that this never happens again, making sure that we enhance the walkability and the walking mall concept of the French Quarter to limit vehicular traffic, to ensure the many pedestrians who are walking and enjoying the various restaurants and art galleries and the many things that the French Quarter has to offer, that they can do so in safety and peace.
Safety and peace. I've always had a wonderful experience in New Orleans over the years. So sad to see this happen, all these people losing their lives. Congressman, we appreciate you taking the time to share your perspective amid all of this dark news.
Thank you very much.
Now, back here in Washington, the new Republican-controlled Congress being sworn in tomorrow. Speaker Mike Johnson hopes President-elect Trump's endorsement will keep him in the Speaker's office. Our reporter panel will join us next with more on that story. You're watching America Decides.
meetings are going well, and I think tomorrow's going to go smoothly.
Welcome back to America Decides. Speaker Mike Johnson is staying positive as he fights to keep control of the Speaker's gavel. The House set to vote to elect a new Speaker when the new Congress convenes tomorrow. Johnson will need almost every Republican's support on the House floor to win. He says he's been making calls to those lawmakers who haven't yet committed to voting for him. President-elect Trump did endorse the incumbent Speaker this week and met with him at Mar-a-Lago yesterday. Joining us now to discuss this story is Daniela Diaz. She's a congressional reporter for Politico. And Julie Grace Brufke. She's a senior political reporter for the Daily Beast. Great to have both of you here. Julie Grace, let's begin with you. Do you believe Speaker Johnson has the votes based on your reporting?
Yeah, I was just outside staking out a meeting in his office, and he's had a number of conservatives in and out of there. And right now he's got 15 to 20 undecideds, with Thomas Massie currently being the only hard no. So from what I've heard right now from senior lawmakers, they think he eventually gets there, but he's going to have to make some minor concessions, and it's unlikely it'll happen on the first vote there on the floor.
And Danielle, what could those minor concessions be if he has to make them?
Well, look, Robert, he has made a ton of promises in the last couple of weeks to Republicans who are hoping to get measures in this huge reconciliation package that they're hoping to pass this year. Of course, he's going to need, and he being Speaker Mike Johnson, is going to need every single Republican in his conference to support those measures. And he could possibly have to give certain measures to certain Republicans. I mean, there could be concessions as well to the House Freedom Caucus members. We saw that play out 2 years ago when they were in exactly the same place with then Speaker Kevin McCarthy. So it could be that he has to guarantee that certain Republicans get certain things on the to-do list before in order to get their vote for the Speaker's gavel come tomorrow. But it could be several rounds of votes before that happens.
Julie Grace, if that reality comes to be, as Daniela just spelled out, perhaps many rounds of voting, is Johnson vulnerable at all? Are there any rumblings among your sources that someone else could emerge as a contender should Johnson struggle round after round?
Frustrations right now with conservatives, particularly over the spending bill, on how that panned out in December, and just kind of some of the ways he's handled his leadership tenure since taking over from McCarthy. That being said, you can't beat someone with no one, and a name hasn't officially emerged yet, which kind of makes that tougher on the eve of the vote there. But I mean, if enough members, I mean, they're working with a smaller majority than McCarthy was working with. And right now, if more than two people vote against him, then another name will eventually have to emerge. And I think a lot will hinge on whether Trump kind of continues to stand by him there.
Let's play a clip of President-elect Trump speaking about Speaker Johnson.
I think they'll support Speaker Johnson. I think we're going to have a great time in Washington, and I think we're going to get great support. He's the one that can win right now. People like him. Almost everybody likes him.
Daniela, inside the House, is that seen as enough from Trump, or do you expect he might need to do more to put Johnson over the line?
The endorsement from President Donald Trump was exactly what Speaker Mike Johnson needed going into tomorrow. He had heard silence, and most Republicans had heard silence from Donald Trump in the weeks after that huge spending bill for the holidays, around the Christmas holiday and New Year's holiday. And when that endorsement came out from President Donald Trump, it's exactly the boost that Mike Johnson needed to be able to get support from some of those more conservative members of the conference. Now, is it everything to be able to get him across the finish line? That remains to be seen, but it was definitely seen as necessary for a lot of rank and file members in the conference. Speaker Mike Johnson actually spent time in Mar-a-Lago just yesterday meeting with Donald Trump. He said that just a couple of hours ago in an interview with Fox Business. So it seems that they're talking, and that Donald Trump is really pushing behind the scenes as well to try to secure that Johnson gets the gavel again. But again, it just depends on what those more conservative members of the conference, of the House Freedom Caucus specifically, want in order to be able to really get to that yes when it comes to tomorrow's vote.
Let's listen to Speaker Johnson from Fox News earlier today.
We're going to get this done. Look, I'm humbled and honored to have President Trump's endorsement for the role again, as well as the endorsement of leaders across the conservative spectrum and the Republican Party, all of my colleagues that are standing with us, and we will get this done.
Julie Grace, you spend a lot of time covering Speaker Johnson. You know his personality. What's your read on his presentation today, his tone, his framing of his candidacy at this moment?
No, I mean, I think he's kind of trying to work things with conservatives now. And I mean, the Trump endorsement definitely did give him a boost. But I mean, he tends to be even keeled. And I feel like his message to members has kind of been like, if somebody else can get 218 then, and wants to challenge me, then so be it. And I'll accept that. But right now, I feel like he's definitely trying to work the room and hoping to get there tomorrow morning to avoid that chaos. And part of his message there has definitely been, without a speaker, we're delaying our agenda and being able to potentially delaying some of these inaugural things that Trump wants to get done. So that's kind of a big selling point.
Speaking of what Trump wants to get done, Daniela, let's say we get through the speaker vote, we cover it, and someone emerges, perhaps Johnson. What's first on the agenda for this new Congress? Republicans can control both chambers. Is it taxes? Is it immigration? What are you hearing?
Well, they're still trying to figure out whether they want to do some huge package that would include taxes and immigration, of course, using that budget reconciliation process, a little bit in the weeds, but basically that would mean that they could pass this legislation without needing any Democratic votes, which is necessary because it doesn't seem that most Democrats would even get behind any sort of tax cuts or border security policies, which is what they want to include in legislation like this. So that is the biggest priority for House Republicans going into this year. Of course, Donald Trump wants to get this done as soon as possible. Republicans feel, because they have all three, they have a Republican trifecta, both the House and the Senate, and of course the White House, that it's a requirement that's why Americans voted them into office, to try to get this passed. So that's what we're going to see, is these discussions to see what they can land on. Of course, it has to be very specific policy that is part of the budget. That's the only way they can pass this without Democratic votes. So it's going to be a really tricky process, and we're going to see a lot and lots of meetings. Should, of course, tomorrow go smoothly and Speaker Mike Johnson regain the gavel.
Tomorrow goes smoothly in Congress? We'll see. Two of the best on the congressional beat, Daniela Diaz and Julie Grace-Brufke. Thank you. Meanwhile, New Orleans' famous Bourbon Street is back open tonight. It's good to hear. After Wednesday's deadly attack. Coming up next, we'll have the latest on the investigation. You're watching America Decides.
I grieve with you. Our nation grieves with you. We're going to stand with you as you mourn and as you heal in the weeks to come.
Welcome back to America Decides. We're following the latest developments out of New Orleans, where early Wednesday a man used a car to kill 14 and injure dozens of others on Bourbon Street. For more, let's bring in Scott McFarland and Ed O'Keefe, two of the top CBS News correspondents. Ed, let's begin with you. President Biden reacting to the tragedy, as well as President-elect Donald Trump. What are the top lines out of both leaders' reactions?
Yeah, I think two things to keep in mind here politically, Bob. Behind the scenes, we now know that the Biden administration and the Trump transition team have been in close coordination, sharing information, keeping the president-elect and his team abreast of what they learned yesterday, starting early in the morning into the evening. And so it's a good, positive sign of what a presidential transition should be. The outgoing and incoming administrations talking about a real-world concern and one that they're going to inherit in about 19 days. But what we've seen publicly is that sort of water and wine, red and blue, black and white contrast between how Biden reacts to things and how Trump reacts to things. Biden holding the traditional briefings with his Homeland Security and national security officials today in the Situation Room, now that he's back at the White House, addressing the nation last night, expressing concern and conveying actual information in his remarks. Whereas, of course, President-elect Trump has been using his social media platform first to spread incorrect information about the attacker, and then to express his general concerns that the Biden administration, specifically the Justice Department and FBI, have been off the mark in recent years, focused on election interference cases, and him, instead of, he argues, focusing on threats of radical Islamic terrorism or rooting out attackers like the ones in New Orleans and the one that blew up a Cybertruck outside the Trump Tower in Las Vegas.
Scott, what's the response to all of this on Capitol Hill?
There was a briefing for congressional members here today as well with Homeland Security officials. That would include some of the local folks from Louisiana and Nevada, also some of the high-ranking committee members. They're coming out of that meeting with some sense that the threat has been isolated in New Orleans. But as you've heard, several times in recent months from Trump allies and from some of the Republican long-term serving members. There's a cynicism they're expressing about the FBI. You heard that yesterday from Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, saying he's concerned the FBI is not transparent enough and might need to be pressed or leveraged to give up information about what's happening in New Orleans. That's been echoed by other Republicans. This type of cynicism about the FBI could sow some distrust into whatever this investigation yields, and there's no indication that the criticisms of the FBI are going to get muted anytime soon.
Let's play our clip of Senator Kennedy of Louisiana that Scott just referenced.
Here's what I want to ask from the federal government. Catch these people and then tell the American people the truth. Now, I don't want you to tell us yet anything that's going to interfere with your investigation. And there are things that I've been told that I think are true that I'm not sharing with you today because it could interfere with their investigation. But after we get to the bottom of this, they need to tell the American people the truth, and the people of New Orleans the truth, and the people of America the truth.
Ed, you just heard those remarks from Louisiana's Republican Senator John Kennedy. What do you make of what he had to say and how it could affect the political discussion of these tragic events?
I think we should all bookmark these 48 hours and the way the two parties are reacting and watch how things might change after January 20th, when Republicans are then in control of the FBI and the Justice Department. Will that skepticism still be there? Will the support for it perhaps be restored amongst those skeptical Republicans? Or will it continue and help buoy the Trump administration's vows to really remake the FBI and the Justice Department as they currently exist, to refocus them onto issues like this and away from concerns about democracy and political corruption that has been the focus of the Justice Department in recent years. But I think, it's easy to say things when you're not in charge, and it changes once you are. And so I think that'll be one thing to watch.
Ed, stick with me. Let's play President Biden speaking out about New Orleans and ISIS.
New Orleans is a city of tremendous spirit. You can't keep it down. You really can't. And we're seeing that today. The Sugar Bowl is back on. We're going to continue to relentlessly pursue ISIS and other terrorist organizations where they are, and they'll find no safe harbor here.
Ed, we just heard, and I want Scott to jump in after Ed on this. We just heard President Biden say we're going to continue to go after ISIS and other terrorist organizations. In the final days of his administration, what's possible from the White House's angle? And then, Scott, tell us what's possible, if anything, from the congressional side.
Look, if they find some direct connection to ISIS leaders in the Middle East and this guy, some direct link, there's nothing stopping them from taking either military or prosecutorial action or sanctions or something. But if not, that's going to become a Trump administration concern. And that's part of why it's so encouraging and important that the Biden team be talking to the Trump team so that they're aware of what's going on, so that when they inherit this in 19 days, they know what to do.
Scott?
Roaring Senate majority comes into town here tomorrow, which will help Donald Trump get his policy wishes, his foreign policy issues included, when he takes over in about 3 weeks.
Scott McFarland and Ed O'Keefe, thank you so much for your reporting and your time. Now back to a little bit more politics. Who could be the next chair of the Democratic National Committee? There's a month now until this vote. Seems like a never-ending race for the DNC. Senator Chuck Schumer now backing one of his allies for the job. Our political panel will weigh in next. You're watching America Decides. So House Speaker Mike Johnson, he has a big test coming up. Will he have the gavel in his hands once again? That all comes to a head tomorrow inside the new House of Representatives, a new Congress coming in. So what are his chances, and how many votes, how many rounds might it take for him to secure his job once again? Our political panel is here with all of their insights and observations. Chuck Rocha recently served as a senior advisor to Senator Bernie Sanders in his presidential campaigns. Maura Gillespie formerly served as an advisor to both former Speaker John Boehner and former Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Great to have you both here. Maura, we'll begin with you. Speaker Johnson's a Republican. You've worked in Republican House politics over the years. What's your assessment of how this is going to play out?
It would be best for the Republican Party as a whole to get this done in one vote tomorrow. I think it's really important that Mike Johnson has the support of the Republican conference, because incoming President Trump would want to have all the political capital he needs to get these first 100 days without any headaches. And I think by wasting the political capital that Republicans had by having had such a big victory this election and wasting it by having this public fight over Speaker doesn't show the American people they made the right choice in choosing Republicans to lead this government and to lead us into the new year. So I think it's really important and to keep it in-house and to keep it to one vote, as Mike Johnson has said to reporters today, that he thinks it'll get done in one vote, and that'll be really impactful for him.
More, hang with us. Chuck, here at the table with me. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader. He'll be watching from across the House floor. What kind of moment is it for him and Democrats as they react and adjust to being the minority, but a narrow one that could be pretty strong?
It's the smallest majority in 100 years, I think I read yesterday. And I think what Democrats are going to do is be like, okay, boys, y'all won. Let's see what you can do. Your first test is, can you elect somebody to lead your own party? So, I mean, I say that with a little fun because they will sit back and say, okay, show us what you can. Show the American people what you can do. The American people absolutely spoke up at the election and said they wanted cheaper gas and groceries. To Mara's point, I don't think they wanted folks who were going to have disarray. They'd like to see this get done in one vote. I don't think they're going to see it done in one vote. You already have one congressman from Kentucky who said he's going to vote no. You can't lose anybody else. And I think he will eventually get there, but I bet it takes a few rounds because some of these members, I think, want an ounce of flesh or something that they particularly would like. Committee assignments, more voice. I will remind everybody that Matt Gaetz was a thorn in everybody's side, and he became Attorney General nominee, then dropped out, then was a congressman and dropped out. Like, he had a lot of notoriety from doing that, and I think a lot of other folks would like that same notoriety.
It's a different kind of House, isn't it, Morris, since you were working with Speaker Boehner in particular?
Very much so. And you're seeing, to Chuck's point, you're seeing members view this opportunity to be, in opposition to Mike Johnson as a place where they could fundraise, get a little bit of attention from the media, get inquiries coming out of those meetings they're having in the Speaker's office, and not speculating to say they will or will not vote for Speaker Johnson tomorrow. They're playing coy because they know it's getting them the attention that they want, without any real plan of how they would actually accomplish something that they're asking and demanding from him. To say that you want to have everything that you want to cut everything, you want to have all these things without recognizing or being honest to the American people of the importance, and with such a slim majority, you can't get everything you want. That's not how this works. You have to work across the aisle. You have to find common ground to take a small step forward, and that's something that my boss, former boss, Speaker John Boehner, would do. He would work across the aisle to get something across the finish line, to take a small step forward for Republican objectives. You just can't get everything that you want all in one fell swoop, and I think that this is going to be important for Speaker Johnson to remind his conference that to get what they want to get accomplished next year done, they have to start with this very basic part of electing a speaker and then setting the agenda going forward. They need everyone in line because they don't have much room to negotiate with.
Chuck, Mora mentioned the possibility of different pieces of legislation getting done in 2025. As a Democrat, when you've heard about the different aspects of the Trump agenda, the Johnson agenda, intertwined, is there anything there? I mean, Senator Bernie Sanders, your old boss, has talked about H-1B visas and how he believes they should be calibrated a little bit. What are you hearing as someone who works on immigration issues, knows Senator Bernie Sanders, knows the House Republican agenda? Is there any area of compromise on border or immigration legislation?
I think there is a chance for that, and I would mention it in this way, and I don't know if it's around the border or around immigration, but there are 14 Democrats that are in congressional seats that Donald Trump won. I would start right there. They're looking for a place to compromise. They're looking for a place for common sense. You saw Bernie Sanders a couple weeks ago talk about how he agreed with Kennedy, who's coming in HHS, saying, look, if you want to get big pharma and big ag out of the ag bill, I'm all in with you. Let's get refined sugar and processed foods out of the mouth of our children. I think there are places there. The border's one of them. I think food, pharma, I think is other parts of this. It's really the point of this whole thing is the majority is so close. Watch those Democrats that are in Donald Trump's seats who are up for re-election, and now less than 2 years of looking for folks like that who could come to a middle ground on separate
quickly,
issues.
Chuck, who's the front runner now in the DNC race?
I think Ben Wickler today with Senator Schumer coming out is big. He also comes from MoveOn.org. He came up organizing with a lot of us guys that are in our 50s. We're friends with Ben. We think Ben's really got a bright future there.
Chuck knows his Democratic politics. Maura knows her Republican politics. And you both know the other party as well as much as anyone. We really appreciate you coming by. Two regulars here on America Decides.
He was the president for 4 years. He was the governor of Georgia for 4 years. And for the other 92 years of his life, he was just a citizen. And he considered that to be a high title.
Coming up, we remember former President Jimmy Carter as America gets ready to say goodbye to the 39th president. You're watching America Decides. President-elect Donald Trump says he will attend former President Jimmy Carter's funeral. That will happen 1 week from today at Washington National Cathedral. The public will first be allowed to pay their respects at the Carter Center in his home state of Georgia. Carter will also lay in state at the U.S. Capitol before the funeral. He died on Sunday at 100 years old. Skylar Henry joins us right now from outside the Carter Center in Atlanta. Great to see you. A special place, the Carter Center and the Presidential Library. I've been there many times. Former President Donald Trump expected to now attend the funeral. What do you know about the process of bringing the former president's remains to Washington and how he's going to get here and how this is all being orchestrated?
Yeah, Bob, well, this will start on Saturday, where the Carter family, along with members of the Secret Service, both past and present for the former president, will be at the Phoebe Sumter Medical Center in Americus. He will then be transported via motorcade to Plains, Georgia, where there will be a moment of silence and also an opportunity for a bell to be rung 39 times, signifying his being the 39th president of the United States, just outside of his boyhood home and farm there in Plains. He will then travel 140 miles here to downtown Atlanta, where top state officials will pay their respects here at the state capitol before being brought here to the Carter Center and Presidential Library. There will be a private ceremony here before the public will have the opportunity to pay their respects, where Carter will lie in repose for several days. He will then be brought to Washington, D.C. From there, we anticipate more opportunities for the public to pay their respects. He will lie in state at the U.S. Capitol before that ceremony and state funeral on January 9th, where we anticipate, as you pointed out, President-elect Trump, along with other former presidents, to be in attendance. President Biden delivering that eulogy. After that, he will be brought back here to Georgia. There will then be another private ceremony before he will be buried alongside his wife, Rosalind, just outside of their home there in Plains.
And what are you learning about Plains, Georgia, and Atlanta, such a history of Carter coming out of South Georgia, how they're thinking about this event, the remembrance of Jimmy Carter, the 39th president? It's been thought about really for decades, since Carter started to reach an elderly age years ago.
Yeah, this is something, Bob, that many around here especially knew was coming, but there is a combination of both grief and pride, right? Just considering the work that has been done here at the Carter Center, especially in the name of policy, health, peace, and democracy all around the globe. And so when we have spoken with volunteers, staff members, all of whom have grown to know the president and first lady intimately, they talked about the times that they have shared, the memories that they have had, and also the impact that he has had not only on the city of Atlanta or the state of Georgia, but really the globe in and of itself. And so I think as the Carters began to move into their later stages of life, especially when we were here last year for the funeral for former First Lady Rosalind Carter, we then started to get a sense of just how much the Carters meant to so many around here. Now that President Carter has passed, that sentiment continues to remain the same, and it really has been something to see as we've been here, seeing all of the people who've come out to lay flowers down, put down jars of peanuts, come out to put down helmets for representing the Habitat for Humanity volunteer work that President Carter did so much of in his second act, if you will. I think many people here saying that they simply wanted to pay their respects to a man who did so much for them.
Skylar Henry, thank you. We appreciate your reporting. We'll be keeping close tabs on everything that has to do with former President Jimmy Carter in the coming days. Friday will mark 66 years since Alaska became the 49th state in the U.S., the last frontier shedding its status as a territory on January 3rd, 1959. President Dwight D. Eisenhower signing the proclamation despite concerns about Alaska's proximity to Russia during the height of the Cold War. Alaska is the largest state in the Union at over 665,000 square miles. That's nearly double the size of Texas. That does it for today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report starts right now.